Hey, gang, welcome back for another episode of Ranching Reboot, the podcast that aims to reboot your thinking about farming, ranching, food systems, and the people that operate them. I'm your host, Brian Alexander. You can find me on social media as Red Hills Rancher on all platforms. This week on the podcast, we shift gears a little bit. We don't talk much about agriculture. My guest today is a former county sheriff deputy here in Kansas, and we talk about some of the things he's encountered during his time in law enforcement, including some myths and things I didn't know. I think it's a great perspective on rural law enforcement that most of us lack. Before we get into that, a quick word about our sponsor, LandTrust. If you're looking for any sort of outdoor recreation opportunity, LandTrust is the place for you. LandTrust listings include over 1 million acres of private land across 40 states. And spring is a great time to start planning your fall hunting trips this year. In the past, hunters looking for private land relied on knocking doors. This tradition has its charm, but it's also kind of a little bit uncertain. LandTrust.com provides a modern solution for both hunters and landowners. Landowners can screen hunters, get notified electronically, and receive insurance. Hunters can help find land and get clear instructions. LandTrust.com helps preserve traditions while making hunting safer and more convenient. Public lands are great, but only account for a fraction of hunting lands. Hashtag Hunt Private highlights the key role private lands play in providing wildlife habitat and hunting opportunities. Hunters should value landowners who manage these lands. Aldo Leopold, a great conservation pioneer, said rewarding landowners who conserve wildlife is crucial. Private lands are much vaster than public lands and often owned by farmers and ranchers. These lands are important for wildlife due to their water, soil, and historical management. Ideally, we keep these working lands intact for wildlife and agriculture. The economic reality is that many farms and ranches struggle financially. This can lead to development and habitat loss. We can change this by creating economic incentives for landowners to conserve wildlife habitat. Hunters can support this by paying to hunt on private lands. This benefits the landowner, the wildlife, and the hunters on public lands. Get started today at www.landtrust.com/reboot or by clicking the link in the show notes. That's www.landtrust.com/reboot or click the link. As I said, my guest today is a former rural deputy sheriff in north central Kansas and a current no-till regenerative farmer. We talk about what rural law enforcement is like, how thin they're really spread sometimes, what life is like in the patrol car on long shifts. With the rise of social media, especially platforms like TikTok, I think many of us have seen interactions with law enforcement that are sometimes less than ideal. Tyler Tobald shares his observations from his time at the Cloud County Sheriff's Office through the lens of someone just like us. So here we go. Nice hat.
Well, thanks. I know a guy.
Yeah, well, we didn't plan that, did we?
No, we didn't. Great minds.
Something like that. How you doing today, buddy?
Oh, busier than a one-legged man at a butt kicking competition.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it is that time of year. It's kind of April. So what do you got going on? You're getting ready for spring planting for fall crops?
Yep, we've got finishing up calving season for our spring calvers and starting to get everything prepped and ready for spring planting time.
Okay. Just what do you planting anything special or weird this year?
Nah, as far as fall crop stuff, it's pretty boilerplate stuff this year. Corn, beans, Milo. Got
Okay.
dad doing a little bit more corn. That way we can do a little bit more triticale cover crop, things like that. So it's yeah, pretty boring this time around. But I am trying some different biological stuff as the season goes. So that'll be fun.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm kind of curious. How do you feel after your first regenerative ag slash soil health conference season?
That was a lot of fun, and I I feel like I have a lot of work to do. That's it left me like, I've done a lot. We've really pushed the envelope for us, but I'm like, man, there's so much more I could be doing.
And I think that's one thing that overwhelms maybe a lot of people is they go to a conference and they're like, "Oh, wow, you know, I'm here and so is here and I've got a long ways to go." But I don't think that should turn people off. I mean, because it's not a process, it's a journey. And like some of the guys that have taken a long time to get where they are, like Michael Thompson, like Gabe Brown, it might
Mhm.
have taken them 20 years. But if we go listen to them and learn from their failures, that 20-year process can get really cut down.
Yep, exactly. Context is very important.
And God, I remember no, 8, 10 years ago when we were talking about coming up with these soil health principles. And I really advocated for that sixth one to be context. Like
Mm.
it's very important because the same things that apply in Iowa, you try that in Western North Dakota, and you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'll have folks ask me about, hey, I have one guy, I'm in Idaho here, and I'm kind of curious what I could try for a multi-species warm season cover crop. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to tell you a different specific things to try up there. I have no idea what your soil's like. I know nothing about Idaho. Like I would actually be more inclined to believe it doesn't exist more than because like there's nobody that lives there that I just probably made everyone from Idaho just like boilingly mad there. But
I mean, I see your point. I see your point.
I told him, I said, you need to talk to someone who is more knowledgeable about your climate, your growing season and time. I can give you a couple people to maybe point you in that direction. I can give you a general idea of some things to try, but don't look to me for giving you a specific prescription because I can't do that.
It, there's two conflicting thoughts right now. Number one, you have to understand that context. And, once you really understand your context and you start applying, some of the principles, that's one thing. And people in your area can kind of look to you for advice.
Mhm.
And then you go 100 miles away from home before people consider you an expert.
Yeah.
And, uh, okay. So a couple weeks ago, um, I gave a talk about fire on the Great Plains because it was just after the big Smokehouse Creek fire in Texas. I gave that to a group in Western Kansas, and it went over great. And then a couple days later, did the same presentation with a smaller Zoom group in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Mm. But they took that different.
It was different. It was a lot different. I mean, it was the same it was the same slides, but as of course, it was a different talk, and I tried to kind of make it relevant for them. And, so what's fire in their context versus the Southern Plains where we are? We're like, 5, 7, 10 years fire return frequency. For them, it might be in 50 years, 30 years. I mean,
Mhm.
a really long time. So it's it's different. And you have to understand that it's such a big country and it's so varied that not everything works everywhere.
Yep.
And so what did you want to talk about today?
Well, we can dive into my old part-time job if you want.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that last time you were here because you didn't want to.
Yeah, yeah. See, there's that, rules that I have to abide by while I'm an employee and everything. But now that I'm not, I can't go into super specifics, but we can actually have a frank talk about law enforcement.
Oh, this will be good. I mean, we'll preface it by there's a need, but we go on. What was your job in law enforcement, I guess?
For 7.5 years, I worked part-time as a deputy for the Cloud County Sheriff's Department. Um, through those 7.5 years, started out, I liked running traffic. Unfortunately, I was more of a road pirate than, an actual cop. But I went to a training that completely opened my eyes to my shortcomings. And then I quickly moved into specializing in highway drug interdiction, working undercover, and also doing a lot of things with case law. I became our department nerd, and it wouldn't be unusual for me to be sitting in the conference room with probably half a ream of paper and reading about 30 different types, 30 different court decisions and all the judge's notes involved.
Okay, so back up. It seems like you kind of had there was something that happened where you just kind of went from basic road pirate, writing tickets on patrol every day, to wanting to get into this really nerdy side. What sparked that change?
There was a training recommended to me by a buddy of mine. It was called Street Cop Training with Dennis Benino. He is a force of nature in the law enforcement community. He just hates cops that just do nothing but sit there and write tickets all day. Is it, your job is not revenue generation. Your job is to fight crime and to go find that crime and fight it. And after listening to that, I had to have a little come to Jesus moment with myself. Your pride gets hurt a little bit when he basically tells you what you've been doing and loving to do is stupid, and you're not actually being a cop by doing that. You need to have a come to Jesus moment with yourself.
That guy running 62 and a 55 really wasn't hurting anybody.
Right, right. I went from 1 year as a part timer writing the most tickets, which looking back, I just want to slap myself for doing that. But I went from that to there was 2 years where I wrote two tickets, and they were both for fail to yield for a law enforcement. While I had someone parked on the side of the road, the rearview mirror brushed me on one, and the other one, I saw it and I moved, and I'd have gotten smoked.
Wow.
That that was the surefire way to get me to give you a ticket. If you nearly mowed me over on the side of the road, I I had a thing that never write a ticket angry, except for when they nearly kill you.
Okay. Okay.
And those 2 got tickets. But I all of a sudden I just stopped. I did warnings because, well, it worked better for me wanting to do drug interdiction.
Okay. Now, before we go on further, tell us a little bit about Cloud County Sheriff's Department. Like, how many guys are working? How many people normally on patrol? Like, what how much area do you have to cover?
We've got a 470 square mile county, and on each we run 12-hour shifts. Usually there's one morning, noon, 6 a 6 p, one at night, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and then there's usually a mid shift, 12 to midnight or 2 to 2 a.m., something like that. And that's all there is usually out there. We have one, maybe two deputies on at a time, and a couple of our admins that'll fill in when needed. And that's if we're full staff. When I first got there, we were so bare bones that we could barely keep full 24-hour service going. We were down to one at day, one at night, and for different shifts. And the undersheriff and the sergeant were having to fill in. That was one of the reasons that pulled me in is my wife's a deputy, and the I helped her study for CLETC, the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Academy, and I loved helping her study, and I thought it was really interesting. And then one thing led to another, and I'm like, "Well, you guys are in bad shape. You guys need some help." She's because everyone was just burning out. Because when you've got, there's guys that were doing a 12-hour shift and then having to go to court and then turning back around on less than 2 or 3 hours of sleep back on a 12-hour shift. And that's just not safe.
No, no, that's a recipe for fatigue and burnout.
Yeah. And that's what really drug me into it is just, I wanted to help. And cause I would get into arguments with different people from time to time. And, and they're like, well, you're you know, such a big cop guy. Why aren't you one? I'm like, that's a good question. Why aren't I one? And to be honest, if I couldn't farm and ranch, I know what my backup career would be.
That's fair.
Mhm.
That's fair. I could see that.
I don't know if everyone in podcast land can tell, but I've got the gift of gab.
And that's great because that means I don't have to carry the conversation.
Yeah, I know enough about enough that I can pretty much bullshit my way through just about any kind of conversation I need to. I can talk about diesels. I can talk about musical instruments since I have a degree in music. I can talk all sorts of things because my ADHD brain bounces between 1,000 different things, and there's a lot up in the pachinko machine I call my brain.
Keeping mind focused sometimes is a challenge. Like,
Same.
yeah, I get that. So I guess what I want people to understand is you're covering a lot of ground with not a lot of people in it, with
Mhm.
very little resources and manpower. I
Very.
I know what it's like in this part of in my part of the world, our sheriff's department. I know I can't count on them to be here in less than 45 minutes.
Yeah. If I was to run, if I could run, if I was at the north end of the county and there was something popped off in a town in the southeast or southwest side of the county, even running, like, I could get that charger up to 148 and it would go down to, it would hit 150 going downhill, but I could put it to the limit the entire way there. It's still going to take me 20 minutes. That's
Yeah.
everyone gets out of my way. And I don't, and I tell you what, the pucker factor when you're running 140 plus at night through deer alleys, man, you're just praying that you're at a good standing with the man upstairs.
I've been asked several times in the last few days about how fast I drive. And, I've gotten several speeding tickets in my life, but it's been, God, I don't know, at least 15 years. I drive the speed limit, maybe two over.
Mhm.
Even like when I got a beer, even when I'm in my pickup and I have a big brush garden. Okay. Have I been over 100 miles an hour on a public road? Yes. Have I done it on a dirt road? Yes. Have I done it on a paved road? Yes. I don't like to drive fast on public roads. A, they're not designed for that. Doesn't feel safe.
No.
And B, there's other idiots on the road going the opposite direction. That's a major hazard that I don't like. I mean, so I grew up racing go-karts. I want to go fast, I go to a racetrack.
Mhm.
That itch got scratched. If I want to go really fast anywhere in the world that I want to go, I'll go jump in my turbo racer. That thing will do 0 to 85 in like 5 seconds. And I can book it 65 across the pasture and it just floats. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what I drive if I want to go fast. I don't need to go fast in my car. I mean, I get, cops do when they're responding, but you're right. I mean, it's super dangerous. You can pop over one rise and the road's full of sheep, or a suicidal deer decides it wants to come out, or somebody pulls out in their tractor without looking.
Mhm. I nearly ate a combine. I was running hot to a domestic, was on a county blacktop, and, no offense to our county. Our county blacktops are awful. They're they were never designed for the type of traffic they see nowadays, and they're worse for the wear because of it, and they do what they can with the resources they have, and those roads, y y 100 is, I mean, 100 on a county blacktop feels like 150 on the interstate because you are a hair's breadth away from ending up a statistic. You have to float that line of control. You gotta push up to it because it's not gonna do anybody any good if you kill yourself on the way to the domestic, you've done nobody any good. So you've gotta find where that line is, and you gotta use your best judgment and make sure you don't tow across it too much. Otherwise, the big man may not be enough to save you.
Besides the driving part of it, how much of your experience as a law enforcement officer, how much of it is comes down to just judgment? Like, okay, I could maybe let you go on this, but I'm going to throw the book at you, and then the next day, similar person doing a similar thing, and you're just like, I didn't see that.
There's a lot of places where we have some flexibility, and I do appreciate that a lot about that with Kansas law. However, there are some shallow rest statutes. That means if I see you doing this, I have no choice. If I have evidence that you're doing this, this, or this, you're going to jail. I have no say in it. And DUI is one of those. Um, two big ones for DUI and domestics.
Can't let
And
your friends go.
yeah, DUIs. When you get your part-time certification, it's only a 2-week class. You don't get to learn how to do DUIs. When you get to the DUI section, they say, call a full-timer. Well, I I had this awful habit. You'll love this. My first solo traffic stop was with the biggest meth dealer in our county,
Okay. Oh,
who
we
was
got to hear this story.
who is known to be extraordinarily violent and have weapons with him all the time. This dude and I are just chilling on the side of the road. I don't have a clue. My training officer who's shadowing me is just booking it to me, trying to get to, because he's worried like hell that I'm going to pop off with something. And then it became real obvious real quick that I was going to be that guy, the shit magnet. My second solo traffic stop, literally 20 minutes after that got done, was a DUI. And it didn't stop. It just didn't stop until the last couple of years of my career, where I would just walk face first into something. I would be wandering around some random back road and then just walk straight, just head first into like, oh my God, I'm not getting home on time. And after I caught my sixth DUI in under a year working part-time, they're like, okay, send this guy to class so we can get certified so he stops calling us in the middle of the night. That's the kind of cop I was for a long time. It would be 10 minutes till time to go home, and I'd see this car go by, and I'm like, that was weird. And I had no ability to put blinders on. And I blame my ADHD for that one, because I would just hyper fixate, like, that's weird. I gotta go look at that. And then I text them, I'm gonna be late. And that's I became that guy. And fun fact about DUIs in the state of Kansas, I can write you a DUI on a golf cart. I can write you a DUI in your combine and anything in between that has wheels and a motor. And you can be working ground in the middle of your field, completely hammered, and I can go out there and give you a DUI.
On private property.
Yep.
You can enter private property and write somebody a ticket for being.
For being DUI.
I
Yep.
didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yep. We had a sheriff in a different county who actually caught a DUI one night because he was getting together with a bunch of his friends. He had just done some work on he had a sweet Harley, and he was showing these guys, look what all I did on it. And he was straddling it, messing with it, and dropped it in gear. And he wasn't meaning to drive off with it, but he was so plastered that it took off, it wrecked, he got a DUI. It was in his front yard, and he got a DUI. His employee is like, I'm so sorry. He goes, yeah, do what you gotta do. This is a shallow arrest statute. Do your job, and I'm gonna be in a world of hurt. But
I kind of feel like that would have been a thing where I just would have been like, I wasn't here and just walked away.
problem with body cams nowadays, that's the days that unfortunately are pretty much those are gone. Which, better or worse, that's body cams do provide us with a lot of accountability, and also accountability for how the public acts.
Okay, and I agree, and it's a two-way sword. Okay, my thoughts on body cams, police body cams. And I get you guys need to have certain amounts of privacy on your shift. But there should be a point where that camera starts streaming. Like when you do a stop or you're interacting with somebody, that camera should start streaming and being recorded on the cloud. Let's talk about a case that happened here in Barber County. It went to the Supreme Court. Are you familiar with it? Stephen Myers, the Stephen Myers case?
No, I'm not.
Gosh, this would have been years ago. Okay. So the short end of the story was the police were the call was there's a drunk guy brandishing a shotgun in town threatening to kill people. Threatening people, not threatening to kill people, just threatening people. It took them 45 minutes to get to town. By the time they got here, he had calmed down, put the gun up, and was going for a walk with his dog.
Mhm.
So now we've got the 3 hyped up sheriff's officers that have just screamed 30 minutes across the county to get here.
Mhm.
Pratt County sent their SWAT team down. They didn't get here till a little bit later. Anyway, the short end was they found my friend Steven, and he was shot at about 6 feet away with a homemade beanbag round out of a personal shotgun by one of the deputies, who was not wearing his body camera, had not read the department handbook
Ooh.
after being there for a year, had not had acknowledged the department's body camera policy, but was not wearing his on that day. Only one of the 3 guys had their body cam on.
Mhm.
Another guy left his in his car.
Hmm.
I mean, you're starting to see things are stacking up here.
Yeah.
And
I don't like any of this, how this is going.
they didn't check vitals for, I think, either 4 or 6 minutes after they shot him. I mean, he passed immediately.
Holy crap. Yeah, you first caught my attention with the homemade beanbag round that they make. But you can go buy those. You don't need to make your own. That seems like a crazy, like, that's like the beginning of the ski slope where they're just making all these horrible decisions.
Yeah, and, like, all this shit is on record. Like,
Yeah.
everything I just said about it is on record.
I'm gonna look that up. You have officially, it's like that line from Django. You had my curiosity, now you have my attention. It's just
First, you had my curiosity. Now you have my complete attention.
yeah. I am gonna have to take a closer look into that one.
So,
I still nerd out over case law.
yeah, take a look at that one, but that's one of those ones that's like, there's a lot of missing audio, and there's a lot of missing video that probably wouldn't make our sheriff's department look great,
Yeah.
and, it's not the only case I can think of that I've heard about in the news in the last 10 years where body camera footage is missing. We can't find it, or it accidentally got deleted when it's something that would probably make that department look bad, which is
Yeah.
why I'm saying, like, maybe there should be a way that these are offsite archived to where it can't be gotten rid of or it can't be deleted to
Yeah.
protect somebody.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to go on a little further on this whole Brewer Myers thing. So the guy that pulled the trigger is Virgil Dusty Brewer, and I probably shouldn't say a whole lot else, but it seems like there's a dance of lemons. Are you familiar with that term?
No,
So
no, really.
it's, somebody that's good like 95% of the time, but is a 5% screw up.
Hmm.
You let him screw up at the department, a few times, and then he kind of
Okay.
sweeps stuff under the rug. Then he does that one screw up that it's kind of like, all right, this is the last straw. We need to get rid of you. You can't work here anymore. And then they go find another job in the industry somewhere else at
Yeah.
another department.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's
I know
not
where you're,
just law enforcement, teachers, like it's horrible in teachers. And
oh, yeah.
I would throw the blame at public employee unions,
Yes.
but it happens.
Mhm.
And I think that Brewer was one of those guys. I think he was a dancing lemon.
I've stumbled across a few of those where you're just like, "Just please leave. You're just the worst. Why are you here?" And then all of a sudden an acorn drops on your cart, right? Well, that
Yeah.
that video just about had a stroke watching that.
I think everybody has probably seen or heard of it at this point. Just like, what's the quick recap and then jump in?
Acorn cop is what we call it, where guy was that was had a domestic situation, had the guy in cuffs, brought him back to the car. Guy had previous history of weapons charges and things like that, but they had searched him before putting him in the car, and he shuts him in, gets ready to walk back to his partner, who she's the sergeant or something like that, and an acorn drops from the tree, hits the car, And this guy thinks that he's been shot and just mag dumps the car, and he's screaming, I'm hit," as he hits the ground, and it just mag dumps on the car from the back. This poor Ford Explorer is just getting ventilated. And then his partner comes running out because she's like, "Oh my God, my guy's gotten shot." And she starts shooting at the car too. After all of this, that guy in the car did not get hit once.
It's
Like, that's gotta be like one of those like movie scenes where it's like so slow-mo flying by you. And this guy was, I guess he didn't deploy, but he was a captain in a special forces unit or something like that. I'm like,
really
yeah. Yeah. Oh,
that's even better.
yeah. He resigned very quickly.
I probably would too.
Yeah. And it's just so so bad. Like, that guy in the car, like, he will never have to work again. He's that dude in there's getting paid. But,
Okay,
like,
so tell me, like, what do you think was going through his mind?
the I
Not the
guess,
guy in the car. I mean, the guy that
uh,
thought he got shot
the
because a
guy,
tree threw an acorn at his car.
I think what it was is, like, he had a leg that was hurting or something, like, he felt something hurt, like, felt pressure someplace right when that sound was made, and I guess to him, it sounded like a suppressed weapon being discharged. And he thought maybe he didn't search the guy because the guy had some weapons charges, and I guess one of them was with a suppressor or something like that.
I'd
So
heard that.
and so he thought that he was taking a suppressed round, and when that adrenaline dumps, it does really and when that adrenaline surges, it does dumb things to your body, and
You
I
fall to the level of your training.
yeah, and I don't understand, like, you hear her yelling, "Where are you hit?" And he's looking all around, and he's like, on the videos, "I'm not." And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah,
dude."
and then it kinda cuts off right after that.
Yeah, the public released one was just a little slice of that. I'm just like, "Dude, you should never have been in this position. You should never have been in this profession." Like, and a lot of times you don't know what's gonna happen till you get into that situation. Like, you can train for some different things, and yes, you do fall back on your training. That's why training is so important. But there are some people that will just fold under that completely. I never had to get to that level. Thank God. I was part of that, 90% of cops who never have to fire their weapon at a suspect.
Uh, Back to training. I was in the military and training is different but similar. Do you think the level of training that you got was adequate
Um,
for the job that you were expected to do?
from the academy, no. I actually have some major bones with the KLETC. Their courses, and I'm gonna throw KU under the bus here because they actually operate under the auspices of KU. And, their curriculum has a lot of problems. There are a lot of things that they have made some changes about, but it's death by committee. You have a board that has to do this and they have to do that. They make it as complicated as possible to make any changes. And there's some case law stuff that they teach that's just flat wrong. And like they've actually overcorrected so much with stuff that I was working with the trainee because I was really good at traffic. They actually stuck some trainees with me because I knew my stuff and I knew my case law so well that they were acting, "Oh yeah, take the new guy, teach him how to do traffic stops and not be a dumbass. You got it, boss." And I'd watch him do a traffic stop and he'd almost just like run to the car and run back. And just, I'm like, why are you hurrying so much? He's like, "I can't prolong the stop." I'm like, "What do you mean prolong the stop? This is just a normal traffic stop. You're not prolonging anything. Take a second and look at the ID. Is it fake? Have you looked at it? When was he born?" Well, we're prolonging the stop." I'm like, "We're not prolonging the stop."
We're making sure his shit's in order.
Basically, Kletsy was teaching that if you take like a half a second to breathe or fart or cough, you're prolonging the traffic stop, you're violating the Fourth Amendment, and you're in the wrong. I'm like, No, 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 you're not. And they're teaching some stuff that's just not right at all. There's one of my favorite cases is Pennsylvania v. Mims. That basically means like if I pull you over on the side of the road, I can you are detained in this situation, and I can dictate your movements. I can bring you back to my car. I can tell you to stand in the ditch. That's the Supreme Court gives us that power. So if I want to bring you back to my car and ask you some questions about your ID because something's wrong or your insurance isn't up to date or something like that, I can do that. There was a guy that took our reciprocity class because he's from a different state, and they told him you couldn't do that. I'm like, bull. I I have some serious gripes with Clutzy. They have some things that are absolutely great. Their driving courses are top notch. Their DUI classes are taught by one of the best men in the business. He has argued stuff with the Supreme Court, but they've got some work to do to make that what it needs to be. And it needs to be a longer class, even for the full timers.
Okay, I just made you the Kansas law enforcement training czar.
Okay.
What are you going to do? How are you going to make training better?
Case law classes are going to be, yes, we're going to teach you some classroom stuff. You're going to be death by PowerPoint for a little while, but I'm going to put you in a situation where I am actually going to take some of these different uh, case law scenarios. I'm going to put you smack dab in the middle of them. And you are going to have to affect your job and affect your investigation. And at the end, I'm going to tell you, you actually violated all these laws. Congratulations. Mhm. And that's something that needs to be done a lot more of, because there's some kids that come back from this so scared of their own shadow, so scared that they're going to get sued, that they they just don't do stuff. Like, they don't get proactive because they're scared of getting sued and they're scared of their own shadow. And
I can believe that because most people are just want to keep their job.
yeah. And I would also this yes, you need to be prepared to be ambushed. You need to be very aware of your surroundings. There are crazy people out there and you need to be prepared for that. But some of the training scenarios that it was just you're doing a normal traffic stop and they're like, "Well, this guy had a samurai sword and he just stabbed your partner 12 times. Where were you?"
I was
Like,
looking at my ticket book, checking the guy's ID.
yeah, like it's just there's ridiculous scenarios like this. I'm like, stop scaring them so much. You're creating this little point of fear in their head. Stop that.
And so I'm thinking about Acorn Cop. And, you know, to you and I listening to the scenario as it kind of played out, okay, there was some stress there. Definitely the people that were in that were feeling stress. Was that cop feeling maybe more stress for than the situation called for? Possibly.
Yeah,
But then again, what's the consequence of not having enough stress response when the situation goes sideways?
that is true.
I mean, you only the flinch reflex is there for a reason. It's
Mhm.
it's our it's our lizard brain way of saving our life when
Yep.
shit goes wrong, right? And that guy's lizard brain defaulted to draw firearm, return fire in the direction of the noise you think shot you.
Mhm.
And is that a training deficiency? Was that mental wiring? I don't know. I don't think we could really get into that. But is there, I guess, because I'm trying to relate Navy training, like when they put you through final battle problems before you deploy. Like, they're just throwing everything at you. You've got like 2 or 3 different engineering casualties, half the boat's on fire, you're flooding, and there's still throwing missiles at you, and everybody's
Mhm.
trying to save the ship. And it's a stressful environment. And, I had friends I had talked to guys that survived the cold. I had friends that died there too, but I didn't have friends that survived. I just made some friends that survived later. And talking to them was like, how much did your training help? And I'm like, I don't, not a whole lot. But what the Navy did is they took all those people that did survive the coal, they sent them all to shore duty, strip mined their brains for the lessons,
Mhm.
and then dispersed them back out to the fleet to get that knowledge out in the fleet. And I guess maybe there's nothing that can really prepare you for when things totally go sideways, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And is there a correct amount of high stress training to do? Like maybe there's a point where like you just say, hey, these are all the stressful situations that come up. This is how we deal with stress. And then maybe there's some scenario based trainings. And maybe what I'm wondering is, are the scenario based stress trainings, are they enough or are they too much?
They have a no, no I know it's at least a week that they have an older building there where they do different scenarios, and they give you sim guns with paint rounds and stuff like that, and you're put through a lot of these scenarios, and it pushes you some of them push it to just about as close as it can get to, and I mean, they'll have instructors even going hands-on with you, and I think I think that has its place because you need to be able to know if you can cope with that stress. If you can't cope with that, getting shot with paint, then you gotta have a hard talk with yourself about whether you can handle it when someone's actually slinging lead. And I believe that has its place, but to sprinkle it through all the other training, I think is a mistake before you get to that point. Because you've got that you're putting a little extra fear in them, and now you're not I don't know if you're getting quite an honest representation of what they're actually thinking and how they're actually responding, because you've already made them afraid of things before you're starting to put them in these positions.
And I think that's what I was trying to say is instead of preparing them for these situations, are we building in too much? Are we building in more fear for these
Yeah,
situations?
I think we are. I think we are. I think that's a major issue, and it's I if I was the training czar, I'd probably pull a lot of that out of the training before we get to that area, just to try to, you need to learn how to do all of this before I make you scared to death and have to do all of it at the same time. I don't want to scare you and teach you at the same time. I feel like that's largely counterproductive.
Because I mean, fear is not necessarily a good teacher. Pain's usually a good teacher.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting here, I was thinking about, I keep thinking about my friend Steven. And like he had 45 minutes to calm down.
Hmm.
The responding officers did not calm down within 45 minutes from that original call,
Oh
right?
yeah.
You've been in those shoes. You don't calm down because you're running 100+ miles an hour down shitty country roads.
Yeah. And a lot of times the information you're getting on the other end is so piecemeal and so partial that you're putting together a picture in your brain of what you think you might be coming upon that is not correct. You're getting bad information from people who are freaked out on the other end of a phone line that has so you're basically it's like that old grapevine game that we used to play in elementary school. So you got the person on scene who's scared to death, who may be calling, who's talking to the dispatcher, who's trying to talk to you, and you're trying to listen to all this while you're doing 100 plus across the county. And when you get on scene, like your friend, he had 45 minutes to calm down. The cops have 45 minutes, and all they're doing is getting ramped up. And the it's a recipe for a bad it's the beginnings of a bad recipe, and unfortunately, it sounds like it went very, very badly.
I mean, to be honest, there were a lot of decision points earlier in the day where things could have been different.
Mhm.
And I mean, even in those final 30 minutes, there were a lot of decision points that if they just would have been shifted just a few seconds, it would have been a totally different outcome.
Yeah.
Uh, you'll get interested reading about that one.
Yeah.
Um, what is the Kansas two-step?
Oh, thank you, Kansas Highway Patrol. I'm about to make every Kansas Highway Patrolman very upset. I'm gonna paint with a broad brush here.
You go find
I
Mr. Tobald in Cloud County.
Yeah, yeah, I do know some great troopers to start out with, but there's a lot of terrible case law that has been foisted upon us courtesy of piss poor training and piss poor job execution by the Kansas State Troopers. So so I'll explain, this is all around a traffic stop. So I pull you over and I think you've got dope. I have some, uh, different types. Oh my gosh, my words are failing me here. I have some indicators that there's something else going on besides you just seeing a cop and being a little nervous. I have some other indicators that believes me believe there's something else going on here. So I do a stop on you. Say you're doing 72 and a 65. Still a valid stop. I'm going to do that stop. I'm not going to write you a ticket for it, but I'm going to give you a warning. And doing this archaic thing, uh, I would give you the ticket or give you your ticket, your warning or whatever, and then I would take 2 steps away from the vehicle and then come back. So breaking contact, the stop's over, and then asking if I can talk to you again.
What if I say no?
Then if I don't have a reason to bring a dog and detain you for a dog, bye, have a nice day. And I had a lot of people be like, "Hey, my traffic stop's over with." I hated the two-step. The two-step was actually so outdated and useless when I was there. Like, we have one guy that we had a guy that's no longer for the department trying to teach that crap, and even then, they were like, Don't listen to that. It's dumb. Don't use it. Alls you have to do at the end of the stop is end the stop. "Hey, I just wanna let you know this traffic stop's over with. However, I'd like to ask you a few more questions. Would be alright if I still talked with you here on the side of the road." And if you said no, unless I have enough indicators to call for a dog, you're gone.
Yeah, I would say no, roll my window up, and accelerate away as fast as prudent without attracting his attention to write me another ticket for that.
Yep. And you would get the problems where a lot of these troopers they'd lean over the edge of the car when they're asking this question. I'm like, "You're detaining the car. You can't be touching it. You can't be leaning against, you can't be leaning." They got in trouble for that. That was before this last two-step thing came into the thing because they were leaning on these cars and, "No, this person doesn't feel free to leave. You're leaning on their car." It's so what what I would typically do if I was wanting to go further in a talk, I'd bring you back to my car. We'd have a conversation while I was writing you the warning. And if you didn't want to talk to me, I actually had someone sit there in stone silence the entire time and only answered the questions that revolved around his ID and his insurance, which that's totally your right. I didn't care. And once I kind of got to looking a little more, I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy just doesn't like cops. No big deal. Here's your warning. Have a nice day. And then after I'm done, I hand you your warning, and then I'll let you, pop the door like you're ready to leave so I can articulate, "Hey, this guy felt free to leave. He was popping the door, getting ready to get out of my car." And then I would ask him, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" Sometimes they'd say yes, and awesome. Or sometimes they'd say no, and I already had my indicators, but I was wanting to get consent. And it gets it gets stupidly more complicated, and I won't bore everyone with it, but
So
it was
where does that turn into, "I smell weed, I'm gonna call a dog," even if you don't?
well, if you smell weed, you've got probable cause to search the car. There's every time I watch a show, we're like, I smell weed. Call the dog. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not how that works.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is it's like, I'm not asking if you specifically have ever, like, said, "I smell weed," when you didn't, just
ah,
as a justification. Like, does that happen?
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it has and probably does and has and will happen again. I've never seen it. That's But then again, I was in a small rural county and stuff like that, and I don't think especially in the era of body cams, especially the newer body cams, like, a lot of like, the ones that our department has now are actually hooked with the lights on the car. So you hit your lights, that your body cam's on. Whether you want to like, it's hooked in and it's automatically on. And it's an encrypted file. You can't like, only our admins can touch that, and our admin and our county attorney.
So you'd know
And
exactly who to go talk to if that file ever got accidentally deleted or went missing.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You
So
ever you ever run into any sovereign citizens?
yes, yes, and, as a sheriff's officer, I actually have a little bit of a leg up compared to highway patrol and police departments. A lot of
It
sovereign citizens won't talk to highway patrol or police departments because they're not elected officials.
the the what is a sovereign citizen before we, like, jump in this rabbit hole?
A sovereign citizen takes natural law to its absolute extreme. That they are a natural citizen, they are a sovereign citizen, that, the laws of this country do not apply to them because they exist under natural law, not the country's laws. And some of them will cite some of these crazy, crazy cases that have nothing to do with actual case law, and they will claim that they're traveling. They're not or they're not driving, they're traveling. They're not, you can't do anything because they're not engaged in commerce and things like. And some of these sovereign citizens, you have a whole gamma. You have the idiots that saw some stuff on YouTube and want to try it out and try to get out of a ticket. And then you have some of the really hardcore believers who refuse to comply with anything, and they will fight you for it too. Luckily, I didn't run across more on that much of that top end, but ran across a couple in the middle, and one that I actually knew.
Like,
And
local?
yeah, yeah, he is a local. He is a Marine, and that he was in Desert Storm, and Vietnam. Desert Storm, he had a couple of I guess he had a couple of rough things. I'm not quite sure what exactly happened. They said after that, he lived in his house and he, aluminum foiled up all of his windows, and you would smell him coming. Like, they said, "Oh, something happened to just mess with his head." And if you tried to talk to him, his first question was, "Am I being detained?"
I usually say that when I'm talking to law enforcement as well.
And which sometimes the answer to that question was, "Yes." But, um, uh, could we take a break? My dad has called me 4 times now, and he's babysitting my kid.
Yeah, sure, no
I'm
problem.
sorry about that. Okay. Crap. Okay. Yeah, I'll get headed out that way. Hey, I am so sorry, man. I gotta go. I got cows out all over the highway.
Oh, see ya.
Yeah.
We'll
All right.
try to finish up another time.
All right. Sorry about that.
Hey, no sweat, it happens. Go.
All right.
And we're back. That was a little longer break than normal. Uh, Tyler had to go put some cows in, so we're back a couple days later, and, those things happen. You get those calls at inconvenient hours.
Yep.
It's sometimes I think it's just the cows wanting to test your response time. It's like, "Let's just see how fast he can get here today."
Yeah. I've never had a gate break like that before, so that was a new one. That's They just kinda wandered out right into that nice lush brome in the ditch. I can't really blame them.
I had the same thing happen probably, I think it was like 2 years ago. like June, July, maybe 3. Um, I'm getting like the sun's coming up. I'm already up and getting ready, trying to get out of the house. I get a phone call. It's like, "Hey, you got a couple cows out on the road." I'm like, "Okay, I'm on the way." You put things in high gear and you get moving. And I was still on the way, and somebody said, "Hey, you got like 50 cows out on the road." I'm like,
Ruh-roh.
"The last one was 7. Now it's 50. Okay, this is bad." So I get there, and all of one of my clients' herd was standing out on the highway into the road ditch. Like, I think it was like 220 animals. Yeah, gate stick broke. They just kinda balled up there in the corner, and gates old rotten gate stick couldn't take the pressure that I probably should have replaced, I don't know, 10 years ago, and, had cows on the highway.
Been there, done that.
It's
Oh, it's good for another year. It's fine.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I'll take care of that next week.
Mhm.
Yeah, cows on highway are like 3 words that always make my heart rate go above 120.
Yes, yes. That's foot to the floor, get there as fast as possible.
Yep, and never mind that guy chasing me with with those flashing lights. He'll figure out where I'm going when I get there and I stop.
You're doing a public service.
He might even be going to the same place.
That's very true.
There's a there's been several times, like, it's the best feeling in the world when you get the call from the sheriff's office and it's not your cows.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good feeling.
But then again, that's been the majority of my recent interactions with law enforcement is responding to cows out on the highway,
Mhm.
whether they're mine or but I think the last 2 has been somebody else's that I've seen the cops.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I think we were talking about, before we had to take our extended coffee break was sovereign citizens.
Yep, I think so.
And, like, maybe I think I wanted to ask you about maybe if you'd had some interactions with them and how they went different than, we often see in social media.
We used to have one that lived in our county, and, uh, he was a vet, and the last he was something happened. Nobody really knows. He would never talk about it with anyone, but, I pulled him over, and I actually knew him from something else farm related years prior, and he's because he was just sitting there straight ahead, wouldn't he was not ready to say anything. I'm like, "Hey, so and so," and he just looked at me, and goes, "Tyler?" It's like, "The heck, man?" He's he's like, "I'm traveling." I'm like, "I get it. Your tag lights burn out." They used to call me Tag Light Tobald.
Okay.
That was if I was gonna find dope, warrants, anything, I did it with a tag light. Those tag lights, there was a good long while there where you could tell who was a dope guy in Cloud County because they had, like, all LED replacements in the tag lights. They're so bright you could see them from probably the International Space Station.
Okay. Well, and
And
here I am sitting thinking that, like, you're looking for tag lights that are out. No, you're looking for aftermarket replacement tag lights.
well, no, I'm looking for ones that are out, but is sometimes in compensating for that, they'll put them in it'll install them incorrectly or whatever, and then it'll be white light to the rear, and I've got them both. I got them both coming and going. That's those the you will never there's never been a stop that I've ever done that has ticked someone off more than pulling them over and telling them their tag lights are burning.
Or that
Be
it's the wrong color.
Yeah, yeah, that's there was there was a while there where for some reason people were using, like, purple and red and stuff, and I'm like, "Dude, color, yes, is an issue, but I still can't read your tag." If I can't see your tag from 50 feet back, then it's not illuminated properly, so I'm like, "You're still screwing up. Just put a white one in. It's not that hard."
You ever pull anybody over because their tag was just caked in mud in, like, a feed truck or anything?
Yes. That one, I tried not to use that one a lot because I don't like it personally because the tag on my pickup is constantly dirty.
I was gonna
And
say, like, I had to kind of like brush off last year's mud to put the new sticker on just a couple weeks ago.
yeah, I'll do that, but that it's usually just as a pretextual stop, just to try to. We were having some really, really bad burglaries going on for just a. I mean, we still do have them all the time, but there was a bad rash there for a while, and we thought we pretty well had it narrowed down to the guy, and he was driving like a choir boy, but his tag was dirty, so that was the stop, and that's how we. That's it was. It's a valid stop, but it wasn't one of my favorite ones to do because I know that if you on any given day, my tag's probably pretty dirty.
And that it's kind of a thin excuse
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And his lawyer tried to toss it because of that, and prosecutor's like, "Well, I mean, is your tag clean?" I'm like, "Go out and look at my truck. It's clean." Think to myself, "I washed it before I came here," but but it's yeah, that one's not a stop I particularly liked because that will tick off a farmer for sure.
Well, I imagine you're not gonna do it just because the tag's dirty. Like,
Mhm,
if you needed to talk to that person or, you suspected they may have stolen goods in their vehicle
mhm.
because of reasons. I mean, it goes back to kinda I think we were talking about judgment.
Yep.
Like, I guess there are certain tools that allow judgment to be exercised in cases so you can make a justification like, "Hey, I really need to talk to this person. I think they got dope in their car, but they're driving perfect. Everything's great. Oh, I'll see them tonight. I know their tag light is white, and that's not correct."
Yeah, the it's the there are so many different traffic infractions that it's like even the super troopers, I'd bet, would even have a hard time remembering all of them. I mean, you need to signal 100 feet before stop. And the only issue with that one is you'll get some defense attorney is like, well, can you tell me what 100 feet is? Like, well, yeah, it's not this courtroom, but yeah, I can. They'll try that. Mm.
I think there's even still a law on the books in my town of Medicine Lodge. Like when you are a mile outside of town, you're supposed to sound your horn to warn all the people with horses and buggies to get off the road. I think that law is still on the books, but I don't think a ticket's been written under that statute for probably, I don't know, at least 50 years.
That would be funny. I might have to look that one up. I love ridiculous laws because there's one in, like, Idaho where you're not allowed to own a pet alligator,
I
and whale hunting's illegal in, like, some Nevada or something like that. I'm like, "Yeah, I get that."
I wonder what the specific case was to make whale hunting illegal in Nevada. Like, what who had an axe to grind there? Like, what was that all about?
I'm not sure if I'm 100% right on the state, but it was a state that made no sense. You're just like, "What? Oh, okay. That's sure." Waste the time and ink for that. Yeah, with tag lights, I had a whole spiel. I was like, "Hey, I'm Deputy Tobald, Clark County Sheriff's Office. The reason why I stopped you tonight is because your tag lights burn out." I said, "If I could just see your driver's license, proof of insurance." I said, and as they were looking for the stuff, I was like, "Hey, just to kind of put you guys' mind at ease, in the 7+ years I've been doing this, they actually call me Tag Light Tobald, and this is after dark. It's kind of my jam. And in the 7+ years I've been doing this, I've never written a ticket for it, and I don't intend to start tonight." And it just kinda makes them feel a little better, and it a lot of times will stop that ramp up of the temper, because I'll have them jump out of their car as I go back to they will never do that on a speeding ticket or a tail light, but a tag light, that will scare the pudding out of you when you see that guy's all ticked off about me pulling him over for a tag light and jumps out of his car. Now I'm freaking out because, well, this dude just jumped out, slammed his door, and I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go."
Yeah, that's probably one of those things that causes an immediate stress response
Yeah. So
because it could 10 out of 9 out of 10 times, it could just be somebody upset and being frustrated.
Mhm.
But you only have to hear about that one guy that
Yep.
comes out of his car and pulls iron and goes slinging lead.
Yep.
Before you start thinking about that every time you start seeing that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that,
Yep.
and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, the training and stressful training. It is at some point, like, obviously the training, like, could be better,
Mhm.
but is what they're doing training wise for high stress situations, is that doing less to help than it could? Or is it not going far enough? I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they take it pretty far during full-time academy with the I think they call it Hell Week. It's the where they're just doing repeated things where, basically they're clearing buildings, people are waiting in closets and stuff to jump them and things like that. That's where they have sim guns and they're getting shot with paint and everything. It gets them just about as close to that line as they can. That does help. And then they do also do some stops where, I think there's, like, a guy hiding in the trunk and they oh, that's something stupid they teach. Always put your hand on the tail light. That way, if someone shoots you, your fingerprints are on the tail light and your DNA's there and
I've
or
heard that.
or to make sure that the trunk's latched. And there was the Dennis Benino from Street Cop Training. He looked back, he goes, there's literally never been a case of someone getting jumped from somebody in the trunk during a traffic stop, or that hand print being used ever on a car. Like, no one ever does it because on dirt roads, that print's compromised in 10 minutes. They go through a Tommy's car wash, it's all gone. Mm.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, what really got you interested in case law? It seems like kind of an obscure nerd thing for a music guy to go off onto.
well,
But, I mean, I understand.
well, a lot of the case law stuff that we learned in part-time academy was they call it feeding with a fire hose. Basically, they just hosed you down with it and you just tried to hold as much as you could in. Well, once I realized I wanted to do interdiction, I realized I didn't have a good enough knowledge base
W
of what I could and couldn't do.
What do you mean by interdiction?
Drug interdiction on, highways, traffic stops, and the like,
Okay.
because the hoops you have to jump through for that are very narrow, they're on fire, and there's probably some razor wire on 1 or 2 of them. And you have to know what case law allows you to do for any different scenario because it can go any one of a million different ways. So, I was like, "Okay, I need to start really honing in on different case law for specifically drug interdiction to make sure I'm operating 100% in the green." And then one thing led to another. Like, when my wife was in the academy, I helped her study for case law, and I thought it was kinda neat. So I had that little bug back there anyways. And then once I started looking, I just went down a rabbit hole and I never came back. Like, one case led to another case, which led to some judges' notes, which referenced another case. And it just went, like that scene from, what was that, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's got all the red thread everywhere on the wall. And
Okay.
that
Yeah,
kind of my
yeah,
brain.
I've seen the meme.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious, I have to go back, like, so you got interested in case law because you wanna do drug interdiction.
Mhm.
Why did you wanna do drug interdiction? Not that it isn't important. I mean, like, fentanyl, meth, horrible problems.
That was, I used to be when I first got going, I was a road pirate, and I went to that training from Dennis Benino, and basically he was like, "Do something that actually matters." Well, I was already good at I'd already kinda walked into it a couple of times and done a couple small fry things. I
Was this
realized,
before or after Taglight Tobald days?
that was after Taglight Tobald
Okay.
really got going, and so I already had the history of traffic. I already knew what I was doing there. I just needed to add a couple more steps to make it work properly. And then once I realized, okay, this is an area I could really go into. My sergeant is the canine, or sorry, I keep acting like I am still working there. I'm not, but the sergeant's the canine. He is an interdiction whiz, and he also liked some case law. So once he realized I was reading some, he was like, "Hey, you should look at these as well." And then we actually started working together, and we had our own little baby task force in our tiny little rural sheriff's office, where him and I actually went out. Like, we had the duty on call, or deputy on call. My sergeant and I were out doing our own thing. We were on the hunt for dope.
Okay.
It just, him and I would always bounce different things off each other. Like, could we do this based on this case law and on this precedent? So we'd look it up and we'd read on it. And him and I, a couple of times, actually had to go to our prosecutor's office because our prosecutor is not up, was and is not up on good case law. And he was getting ready to toss cases because he didn't know what the hell he was doing. And so we had to actually go like, here's all this case law. Please read it.
Uh,
We're right. Please stop taking advice from defense attorneys.
A rural prosecutor not knowing the law. Imagine that.
Yeah, ours is bad. No one wants the job because it only pays like 70 grand a year. And if you're going to go to law school, you're not going to come back here to the middle of nowhere for 70 grand a year with those law school bills.
And you're the bad guy.
Yep.
You're almost always the bad guy in the county.
Yep. And ours is, I think he's about ready to retire, which is a great thing. He needs to just retire and call it a day, and hope like hell we can find someone that knows what they're doing.
Well, maybe you'll get somebody that's worse.
That's what we're scared of.
Yeah. That can always happen.
At least with him, we knew what we were getting into. He had a case of mine that he was going to drop because I had probable cause. Long story short, I had probable cause based on a dog alert to search the vehicle. Inside the vehicle was a lockbox. And I broke open the lockbox and searched it because I had probable cause to search vehicle. And since I had probable cause to search vehicle under US v. Ross, I also have probable cause to search any containers inside, locked or otherwise.
Really?
Yep. Now, it's not that it used to be the law of the LandTrust all 50. Now in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, I believe are two states where you have to have warrants now, which is irritating for the judges because on the side of the road, you have to basically really quick type a warrant, email it to the judge, which requires you to have a computer and be able to email on the side of the road, which neither one we can do. But yeah. But yeah, he was ready to drop the case based on the fact that I popped that open. And I was like, no, I'm allowed to do that. And I think the other one on that is Wyoming v. Houghton as well. And it's just, I had to take him the papers and be like, please read. I'm right. You're wrong. And he did not like being called wrong, especially by a part-timer.
I was gonna say very, very few people that are in a professional position of respect like being called out when they're wrong.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to do it.
Yep.
I'm curious. We've seen the cop shows like they're calling in, oh, just get a warrant, and then every time we see a judge is in court, and I guess I have to admit, I don't know what the hell a judge does all day when they're not in court. And is there? I guess what I'm asking is there a judge on standby that you guys know you can call to get a warrant? Or what happens if all the judges are in court or on vacation or playing golf?
The vacation has happened. We've got our district and we've got can't remember the other one, but we've only got 2 judges here in Cloud County. And the one, she lost a family member, so she was out. And then the other one, he had already had a vacation. So we actually had to get, there was a judge in Lincoln County that had to come over, and I love him to death. They actually, highway patrol waits till they're in Lincoln County before they do stuff in there because he is a hanging judge. He is a stickler and he will chuck the book at you. But yeah, he came by for a while and helped because we have to have a judge available to us 24/7. Like they're on call 24/7. Like I woke up the one judge at 3 in the morning. I'm like, hey, I need a case I need a search warrant. I need this, and this. And I had to bring it all to him. That was actually the night that I found pipe bombs. That was fun.
Tell me more.
This was in my early days. This just cemented my role in just an absolute shit magnet because I was working on a theft case. It was on a stolen generator. And the guy that we were pretty sure stole it, we had witness statements, but they were not reliable ones because they were fellow dopers and not exactly reliable. But they were enough to at least kind of start following the footsteps. I show up to his mom's house, and I say, and my wife actually had tried to help me with this case the day earlier, and she missed her because she was going to bed right at 7. I
Okay.
think that's when Wheel of Fortune finished up. My memory serves, or something was finishing up. She took her hearing aids out at 6:50. That's when my wife stopped by when she'd taken her hearing aids out. I stopped by like just as she was getting ready to pull the first one out. I knock on the door. I said, "Ma'am, introduced myself, explained why I was here, and usually I'm used to the, oh, hi, sweetie. And she was, oh, yes, he was such a good boy. No, I was like, ma'am, I believe your son is stashing a bunch of stuff he stole in your garage out there. I was wondering if I could take a look out there. She goes, wouldn't surprise me. He was a no good son of a, always has been. I should have beat him harder as a kid. I'm like, oh, oh, okay. You're that kind of old lady. Got it. I was like, yes, ma'am. And she's like, you just tear that place to bits. I can't get out there. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll go out there and look. 'Cause I was looking for the generator amongst a couple of the other things I was there for. I opened up a drawer and a couple of pipe bombs rolled forward. And I was like, oh, hi. Yeah. I'm like, that's a little worrisome. And then I looked over to the side because something in the corner of my eye, there was another one leaned up against the pile of tools. Because that's how you store your pipe bombs is just leaned up haphazardly against a bunch of tools that can fall on a concrete floor.
Well, I don't want to talk about where I store mine.
Hypothetically speaking.
Right, right, right.
But yeah, I called then he was the undersheriff and I was like, so I just found pipe bombs. That was my first search warrant. Because he's like, okay, yes, you did have permission. He's like, let's just kind of ironclad this with a search warrant. He is like, yeah, you had permission, and that's not his domicile. That's just a storage area. We should be all right, but let's just make sure we're okay. So that was my first search warrant,
Okay.
and we had to call the Riley County Bomb Squad, and so we had to wait for them to come up, and then one of the guys that worked because I was in Concordia, which has its own police force, and one of the guys there was like, "Are you sure they were pipe bombs?" I'm like, yeah, I've watched enough movies and I have eyes. The pipe, Teflon tape on one end, welded on the other with a fuse. Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, goes bang like a duck.
Yeah, that's not one of those that you hold in hand, light fuse, and see if it goes fizzle or goes pop. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a bad idea.
So bomb squad got there. They were going to try to send the robot in, but it couldn't fit because the place was so packed full of stuff. So they rock paper scissors for who got to put the Hurt Locker suit on and go in there after him. And the guy who won, yeah, he runs and grabs. Like they had this whole big thing and a trailer and everything. They have a special type of water charge that busts them open without destroying the evidence. So we took him out to a middle of nowhere. They popped him open for me. So I was able to actually collect the evidence and find DNA.
Okay.
So I was able to link it to the guy, but the guy had cancer, so he didn't get He told me he promised me and the prosecutor he'd be dead in 6 months. It took him 4 years, but eventually he made good on his promise.
Did he cause any more trouble in those 4 years?
Yes, lots more trouble.
Another story for another time.
Yeah, the favorite one was lugging a 454 big block up into his apartment building, into his room, and then, rebuilding it in his apartment.
I mean, perfectly viable if you don't have a garage, but,
Yeah,
I mean, he I'm assuming when you say up into his apartment, you mean not ground floor,
3rd floor.
3rd floor. So I'm imagining a cancer patient trying to lug a big block Chevy up 3 flights of stairs.
Yeah. Meth is a heck of a drug.
Apparently.
Yeah, yeah. That was a fun one. That was a fun one.
I mean, getting all the parts up there is one thing, getting the completed motor out. I wonder if he had a plan.
I do too. That block was stripped apart and he had grinders and he was redoing his heads with a handheld angle grinder. That engine was gonna be mint when he was done with
That's a hell of a drug.
it. Yeah. There's all sorts of fun stories. The one of the things that really pushed me a lot, I guess the other thing that really pushed me into drug interdiction was I despise drugs. I believe that's one of our country's biggest moral failings, and I've seen what it does to good people. I've a good it's actually an elderly, couple that lives in one of our towns. They were he had come from a pretty rough and tumble up life. They had finally got their shit together. So nice. She made great coffee. She I forget where she ordered them from. They were just really nice folks. He got back on it. So did she. You can't even recognize them now. They don't bathe. They don't take care of themselves. The house, you can smell it driving by. They almost devolve when they get into this stuff. They just don't care about themselves. All they care about is the next fix, and they destroy everything around them. And it's just, it's horrible to watch.
I'm assuming you're talking about meth.
Meth, yeah, yeah, and fentanyl that's becoming an epidemic that's about to run completely out of control. It's already out of control in a lot of different places, but we've been finding it here in middle of nowhere, Kansas, and it's laced in everything.
Wow.
We're finding it in weed.
Really?
Yep. They want that downer effect to be even a little more potent. So we actually intercepted a load a long time. This is a while ago. Details that can't really go into too much, but it was weed laced with fentanyl. And that probably would have terminated anybody who came into contact with it. That is an unholy abomination of a drug.
Because it doesn't take, like, all I know is it doesn't take very much to get you hooked, and it only takes just a tiny bit more to kill you.
Yeah. And all these amateur chemists that are, bringing it over, bringing it over the border, mailing it in, whatever. There's no quality control on this. It ain't FDA, inspected or anything. So, this much was going to do it just right. Well, then it turns into maybe this much the next time and you're done. And what's worse is there is a less than 5% success rate rehabilitation on fentanyl.
Okay, I mean, I didn't really intend to go here, but what would what would you do to solve it?
Well,
What would you do to try to address the fentanyl issue? I mean, not necessarily, the meth, but, maybe that too.
fentanyl, the roots of fentanyl grow very deeply. It's not just as simple as the border. It's actually China. China makes all the raw ingredients. China sends all those raw ingredients over to the cartels because the cartels need some place to wash their money. China's more than willing to wash their money for them. I forget the book. I was reading some different parts of the Peter Schweitzer book. Anywho, I was reading an article he wrote talking about all this and that China sends the drug cartels all their stuff and the drug cartels launder all their money through the Chinese banks and the Chinese get their cut. So the Chinese are they are making money hand over fist because
Billions.
yeah, billions and billions, and that's where it's really originating from, and it's actually part of their whole disruption campaign. Why fight a war when you can destroy them from within? And they're to a large extent they are succeeding. It's we've seen this stuff come in the mail directly from China.
2 Cloud County addresses.
Yep. Yep. It's to stop it, it is going to require quite the it's gonna require a very hardline approach with China. Mexico is part of the problem, but honestly, at this point, the drug cartels, they may not realize it or not, but they're actually just the middlemen. They're the patsies. Yeah, they're making a bunch of money and they're, causing their own line of death and misery behind them, but Chinese are the ones getting rich.
I I'm sorry, I just had the thought about, like, it what would the vertically integrated chickenized industry look like? It's a terrible thing to think of. Oh, terrible thing. It Yeah, I don't have answers either. I mean,
I don't have a good one.
I think we've seen some experiments with, like, decriminalization succeed, and we've seen some fail. Obviously decriminalizing everything is not the way to go. Portland, Oregon, specifically,
Yeah.
that one kind of failed. I think you got magic mushrooms in Colorado now. That seems to be doing fine. Oklahoma roads are nice. Colorado roads are nice.
The problem in Colorado that they won't talk about is the fact that they now have to spend, I think it was last I heard, it was like 67 hold on. That was for every dollar, it was a dollar 67 they were having to use to monitor and deal with all of the people not getting their licenses and also dealing with the radical uptick in DUI drugs. They
So, so
before
for
they legal sorry.
you're saying for every dollar that they're getting in tax revenue, they're spending $1.66.
Yeah, dealing with it because the radical uptick in DUIs has been astonishing. And before they legalized it, they didn't have a special task force that dealt with weed. Weed was just weed. Whatever. Here's a ticket. Have a nice day. And now, since you got to have a state stamp, you actually have to go through a licensing procedure. There's a bunch of people that are trying to get around that and sell under the table to the local shops. Now they actually have to have this apparatus. They actually have this huge task force now that goes around and has to deal with people not conforming to the state's marijuana growing regulations. So they're actually shooting themselves in the foot because they're having to spend more money dealing with this than they were before. Typical government thing, right?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, like, if, like, we just made it, like, not illegal, like, you just took away all the laws about growing plants. We'll just take them away, then we don't need people to enforce laws
Yeah,
about
but
those
how do we
things.
get our tax dollars?
Ah,
We got to steal from you somehow.
just step up on the enforcement. Hey, I don't mean to blindside you with this at all.
All right.
Civil asset forfeiture.
Yes. This is a heck of a topic. This is something that is somewhat overused in a lot of different cases.
But
There are your spectacular ones that make the headlines.
for the
And
people that don't know what it is, what is it in like 10 seconds or less?
if you sold a bunch of dope, you've got a bunch of money from that dope, you went and bought a Ferrari. I catch you with that, I can seize your Ferrari because it was proceeds from illegal gains.
Then you got to prove that, right?
Yep. Yep. Got to prove it. It's got to go to a judge. It's a whole long process, and it's expensive, actually, really expensive to deal with.
So I guess it's never happened to me, but I don't wander around with, thousands and thousands of dollars in my pocket. I don't drive real flashy cars. I have nice cars. They're just not terribly flashy. I guess I've just, and granted my interactions with law enforcement are very limited because I'm extremely rural. I stay out here and I just don't go to town. And when I do go to town, I don't speed. And I'll check my tag lights tonight just to make sure. Um, but like all I really know about civil asset forfeiture is like what you hear in the news, and you hear horror stories like, yeah, I just sold a car and I had $8,500 in cash. I got pulled over. The cop said it was drug money. It wasn't, and he took my cash.
Yeah. That is and the thing is if he has if there's a halfway sane judge and a prosecutor with more than two brain cells to rub together, because you have to, the paperwork you have to put into place on this, it isn't just, hey, thank you for all the cash. It's, hey, we have to hold this cash and then we have to submit up the chain and it has to be approved by a judge. Our, it's a process and we have to prove, we have to be able to prove it to them, hey, this is why, and the judge will actually put you to task on this again, if it's a halfway decent one. And I would have to think, like, some of these folks, the judges gotta look at them and go, "Are did you do a marijuana before you did this? Like, what is wrong with you?" Because there are some the one case that I remember the most is a guy had, they were $500 bills. They were in a denomination of a $500 bill, and he collected rare money, and that is very rare legal tender. Like a $500 bill is worth someone, right? Last I heard, it was close to $1,000 because they are so rare.
Right.
The cop thought that they were, first thought that they were counterfeit, then thought, okay, you've got a lot of them all up here. And I guess the guy had a roach or something in the car. So because he had a roach, because he had that, he seized it all. And then when they asked for it back, they didn't get he didn't get the $500 bills because they had put it in a bank or something had happened on the backside where they stored it in a secure place and they got $100 bills back. And the dude lost his mind. And I would too, because that's, they gave him the exact dollar value of what was showed on that denominations.
Face
And
value.
yeah, that I don't ever remember how that turned out, but I know the guy was ticked and he was suing. There needs to be a couple of more hurdles. And for us, we were always really careful about that. One thing about the sheriff we have now, he's very constitutionally minded. And there's some things he's like, you need to be able to tell me you use, because he's been doing drug stuff for longer than I've been, almost as long as I've been alive. Sorry, Ken, I'm not calling you old. But he you have to be able to, he knows case law and stuff almost as well as I do. And you have to be able to present to him, this is why I did this because of this. You have to give him the whole thing. And there is usually some sort of case, arrest, something that goes along with it. And so he's really, really gun shy on that. And there's also some times where it's just not worth it. Like, we find a big load of dope in a 92 Bonneville, probably not gonna seize that because that costs, it's like $2,000 or $3,000. It's expensive to do all the fees and that are included with it are extremely expensive on our ends, and that comes out of our budget. If we
Oh,
can't
you take the
recoup it,
dope, but not the car.
yeah, we would take the dope, but not the car. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, that was not articulated well.
I was gonna say we're not old Buick full of dope. We're not gonna seize that. I'm like, are you talking about the car or the drugs?
Yeah, drugs, we'll take those all day long, but the, Bonneville, yeah, that'll end up just getting released back because it's not worth the time and the money to seize a car that's worth $400 when you have to pay 2 or 3,000 in legal fees and everything else that has to come out of our budget.
I mean, I'm making notes like car worth less than $4,000.
Yeah,
Correct tag lights, good tail lights.
yeah, and if
Don't
you
speed.
see a cop, don't do this. I love the deer in the headlights look. I'm like,
Yeah,
"Yeah."
just act natural.
Yeah. Just
Just fly casual.
oh, yeah, exactly,
Just,
I don't know. Fly casual.
just act like you belong.
Perfect Star Wars reference there. I like it.
I don't know, fly casual. Oh man. Um, I mean, we have all the time in the world, but kind of want to, not make this too terribly long because attention spans. I texted you a couple topics before we got started. You want to pick one?
EIDs.
Let's go.
That one's oof. I got some hot feelings about this one.
Okay, let's hear them.
Well, earlier we talked about, someone having to admit they're wrong. It kinda hurts your pride a little bit when we're talking about my prosecutor.
Yeah.
I was in that case a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
I I actually, I have, 840 EIDs in our herd.
Okay.
And I bought in hook, line, and sinker to USDA's line of thinking. I'm like, you know what? Disease traceability with how integrated our food system is, we need to be able to find something fast. I think that's a great idea. I would love to help be part of the thing, part of the solution with this. Did it voluntarily, actually paid for my tags, all that good stuff. And also I like them because I have a ID 5000 scale and I have their EID paired with their visual ID tag in my scale system. I wand them. I'm not worrying about I have not missed a tag in
Yes.
years.
And the weight is always written down in that electronic database with the
Mm,
tag number. You're not dependent on the scribe anymore.
yes, and it allows me to better track everything. I love having all that more information because when I can find, wow, that cow's 2,200 pounds and she had a 52-pound calf, sale. Get out of here, you whale. But that's the line I was sold on. And then I got to
But you did it more originally because USDA was saying we need to do this for traceability for diseases.
yeah. And I could see the writing on the wall. Whenever they suggest something, it usually the carrot comes with a stick later. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get in front of it because when they do decide to make this a rule, everyone's going to be scrambling. No one's going to have the tags. It's going to be a giant mess. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get ahead of it. Just do it first. And I've liked it. And then I read some different articles. I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote the last one. That's what all of a sudden I've seen some other creators like, no, you're not getting my EID information. I'm like, they're not asking for a database, are they? And I'm like, oh crap, they're asking for a database.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. And I'm like, you're not getting my cow's numbers. And then I start looking more and more, they're wanting to play ball with the world. Crap.
World Economic Forum.
That and there's another animals subsection of that. They're wanting to play basically it's the same people. It's
The
like the
World
people
Wildlife Federation.
yes, I think so.
Okay.
Uh, and the USDA is wanting to signal to them, "Hey, we're taking care of, we're taking care of cow burps here. Like, we want to start taking care of them like you're taking care of them." I'm like, then I start reading stories of like Ireland had a very, very loud and angry stories where there was an area of Ireland where they passed all these EID regs, had the databases, and they said, "Hey, this area of Ireland has too many cow emissions," and basically terminated 11,000 head of cows.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I went from inquiring to blood boilingly livid because I fell for it and I felt like a dummy at the same time. I hate falling for things, and I don't like surprises, and that was worst of both worlds.
Okay. I mean, I'm working through that, and I put 840 tags in the cows that I used that I had because same reasons you did, not because the USDA said for traceability. Like those records were mine. They stayed here. I
Yep.
never linked any of those databases to the cloud. I mean, if it is, it's maybe an Excel on Microsoft Office cloud that I can get from wherever.
Mhm.
That's fine. That's fine. Not I did they what they're doing, I think what they want to implement here, big picture, is the way that they trace cattle in England.
Mhm.
Like within 48 hours of birth, got to have 2 ear tags in it that match, report the number to the government. And if that cow leaves your farm, you got to report that movement within such and such time period. And gosh, once that data starts to become available, what do you think the traders are going to do with that?
Oh, that I hadn't even thought of what the traders will do with that information. My god,
I just did.
that will get ugly in a hurry. Yeah. I I the government's not getting a shred of my data. That's like, I don't know how I'll make it work, but on this one, I will not comply. They don't get 1 or 0 from my herd.
I think they're going to get a lot of resistance from sale barns too.
Yeah.
I mean, who's gonna go force the sale barns to put in all the EID readers and equipment? There's only one barn. Now, granted, the last time I called around was 2 years ago. But as of 2 years ago, there was only one barn within 3 hours drive that had EID readers and would do like EID verification sales.
Yeah. That's I don't even know if Salina does it. I've never seen it or heard about it if they do. That's, but yeah, they in one of the articles, they were talking about, "Oh, I know people are so worried about the costs. We'll help you with the costs. We're gonna get allocated another $15 million to help, people with reader costs and this and that." And I'm like, "Thanks. That's no, no, thanks. I'm good. We don't have $15 million first. And secondly, no, you don't get my information." It drives me absolute it's made me so angry because I fell for it. So, 1, I'm irritated because the government's trying to pull a fast one, which is typical, but 2, I went from, like, being super jazzed about it to just below the floor. Like, that drop for me was quite the drop back to reality.
Kind of wraps up into the whole trust us, we're from the government.
Mhm.
Trust
Yeah,
us, we're from the government.
we're here to help.
We're here to help. Step out of the car. You have license and registration, please. Had to throw that one in there.
Right?
So, so what's going right these days? What do you feel good about, like, in the world, on your farm? What's going
I
good?
l
What do you
I
feel good
love
for?
I love what I'm seeing with the regenerative movement. Like, I know it's a fairly common answer, especially in a lot of our regen circles, but I am truly happy about some of the things I'm seeing. In our local area, I've got guys who laughed and mocked this idea 10 years ago. And I got one that's just down the road, Scott, 280s that he just tried cover crop in. And he's like, "Tyler, they caught so much snow." He's like, "I got moisture like a foot and a half down." He's like, "I- That was that's awesome. It's like, I love that. I'm like, yeah, yeah, you do.
It's amazing what a little residue in a green living plant will do.
Yeah. And I getting to that's I've had so many people. I've the inbox on my TikTok is I don't check it all the time because there's just too many things in the world to try to take care of is and there's usually 30 to 40 messages in there. Hey, what do you think about this cover crop? Hey, I'm wanting to try cover crops, but I'm from this area. And I was like, well, I can't tell you exactly what to do, but I can at least give you some pointers of where to start looking. And getting to have those conversations makes me so hopeful for the future because so many more people are now starting to, even if they haven't fully down the Kool-Aid yet, they've at least taken a sip. And sometimes that's all it takes.
Take a sip and keep drinking, and maybe you'll like the taste.
Yep. That makes me really happy with what I'm seeing right now. And I'm going to brag a little bit on me for just a half a second. I pulled some roots out of my triticale. Oh my gosh, those looked so good. I dug 18 inches down and was still finding them. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. And I've got my new moisture probes in, and you can actually see where the moisture is or they're pulling moisture from that 18-inch layer.
Very
I'm
cool.
I'm
Very
like,
cool.
that's
How long did it take you to get rid of was there a hard pan there? How long did it take you to get that
yeah,
broke up?
about year 5. Year 5 into year 6. That was no-till is really good for years 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, but on year 4, year 5, or year 6, it's usually one of those 3, you are going to deal with a massive hard pan issue. You just don't grab the steel, don't grab the hair, don't grab anything, don't rip it, just grit and bear it for a little bit. I promise it'll be okay. Plant some make sure you got a living root, it will open itself back up. And you've got to that's just let the soil do its thing. Let the microbes do its thing. About year 6, if you started in year 4, around year 6, it's back. Year 7, you're even better than ever. Now I've most of my stuff, I can push fence posts in. If it's not drier than dry, I half the time don't even have to hammer line posts in. I just push them in and go.
I I like what you said, and I'm struggling to think right now. Like, I've heard some other guys that have gotten into no-till and regenerative talk about, like, the first couple years, it's kind of you feel like you're behind the power curve.
Mhm,
That's a flying reference. Um, that you're behind the power curve and you're struggling and you're just kind of reactive until you get the nutrient cycle to start working again. And once the nutrient cycle starts working again in year 3,
mhm,
you'll things really start to take off. And then I can see, around year 5 to year 7, after your biology is working, your minerals are cycling, you're finally getting some healthy enough plants that are going down to challenge the hard pan. Then you have hard pan penetration issues. And that's of course a contextual thing, whether or not you have a hard pan or a plow pan to deal with.
mhm,
But I think the takeaway is, like, there are dips.
mhm,
Like, it's not just a hockey stick curve straight up. There are dips, there are plateaus
mhm.
because of things you really can't control. You just have to wait for the biology to do its thing naturally, and that takes time.
Yeah. It's be patient, don't rush it. Just let it do its thing. That and after a while, it will come through for you. That's for us, for our context, for our area, it has worked wonders. And I think I think it can be applied in a lot of other situations. You just it's yeah, like you said, it's not straight up. It is it takes time, it takes management, and when you make a management mistake, you'll pay for it. Just let the biology do what God intended for it to do. It will get there. Just don't get in its way, help it along. Don't cudgel it into submission. Let it help you.
I like that. I like that. I think it's a great place to end.
I think so.
JTech Farms on TikTok, Facebook. What else?
Instagram and YouTube now. I finally opened up a YouTube channel that's not it's not full of content yet, but I have moved over some of my TikTok content over to there. So, working on some more long form stuff for it. So hopefully content will be coming soon for there.
Very cool. Very cool. Looking forward to that. All right. Um, been fun. I mean, we'd probably go for another couple hours, but we'll do another one soon.
Okay. Sounds good to me. I enjoyed it very much. Thanks, Brian.
Yep. Well, good to see you again, buddy. And rest of y'all, have a great week. See ya.